when you see this video, I want you to take a close look. I want you to listen to the audience. Listen how they react. And then we're going to talk about how if his prediction, if it comes true, it could destroy everything that Christianity has built in the world, in the West, and even beyond the West now. Welcome back, guys. This video we're about to watch is absolutely chilling. Absolutely chilling. And I tell you what, if we think we know the implications of AI, there's a lot of talk lately about how it could be demonically possessed. There could be some demonic aspects to AI, whether it be, the spiritual forces of this world getting a hold of the algorithms. I don't know. I don't know that. There is some evidence that shows people becoming not only oppressed, but possessed, if you will, by some of these AI chatbots, right? People deleting themselves. Children. We just recently, a report found this new AI teddy bear they just took off the market because it was speaking of adult topics. But what we're about to watch, what we're about to look at, this is Elon Musk, okay? One of the leaders in AI with his platform Grok. So he can see much further into the future than we can on how these technologies are going to shape our culture. And what he says is perhaps, I think, the most insidious attack on the fundamental values of Christianity, the Bible. It's an attack on God himself. And when you see this video, I want you to take a close look. I want you to listen to the audience. Listen how they react. And then we're going to talk about how if his prediction, if it comes true, it could destroy everything that Christianity has built in the world, in the West, and even beyond the West now. Let's take a look.
If you say, like, in the long term, where will things end up? Long term, I don't know what long term is. Maybe it's 10, 20 years, something like that. For me, that's long term. My prediction is that work will be optional.
Optional.
Optional. So...
We'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be like playing sports or a video game or something like that. If you want to work, in the same way, like you can go to the store and just buy some vegetables, or you could grow vegetables in your backyard. It's much harder to grow vegetables in your backyard, but some people still do it because they like growing vegetables. That will be what work is like, optional. It's kind of interesting. And my guess is, if you go out long enough, assuming there's a continued improvement in AI and robotics, which this seems likely, the money will stop being relevant at some point in the future. Currency becomes irrelevant. But AI and humanoid robots will actually eliminate poverty. And Tesla won't be the only one that makes them. I think Tesla will pioneer this, but there will be many other companies that make humanoid robots. But there is only basically one way to make everyone wealthy, and that is AI and robotics.
Sounds great, doesn't it? I mean, listen to the audience, right? Listen to Elon. Listen how he talks about humans not having to work anymore if they don't want to. Why is this so evil? Well, first of all, I don't think it's possible, right? Someone's going to have to work. There's always going to have somebody to work, which is great. Work is great. And I believe he is absolutely false when he says that AI will be the only solution for poverty. No. The solution for poverty, and they've done studies on this, is getting rid of corruption. The countries that you have the most corruption in the world have the most poverty. It's direct correlation. So if we can get rid of corruption, which I don't think is going to happen, we live in a fallen world, but the more we can minimize corruption, the less poverty there will be. It makes absolute sense. But living in a world where no one has to work, nobody has to do anything, AI, robots will do it all. I mean, it sounds like a utopia, right? But it's not. It's the opposite. It's more like a dystopia where control is centralized and humanity, those who don't have to work, are dependent on the system. And we'll get into that in a second. But spiritually, why is this a direct assault on God and his design for the world? Well, the scriptures can answer that for us. If we go to Genesis 2:15, now this is before the fall. So it's part of God's divine order for the world before sin entered into it, meaning it's good because God created the world good. Okay, it says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. You see, work is part of God's design for humanity. Work was part of paradise, but why? Why was it so essential for work to be a part of God's design for the world? Well, glad you asked, because for this, we go to Exodus 20, verses 9 through 11. Verses 9 through 11. It says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but this seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Move ahead. Why 6 days? Right? I'm sure most of you already know this, but for in 6 days the Lord had made the heavens and earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. When God commands his people to work 6 days and rest on the seventh, he's tying that rhythm to his own work in creation. It's actually patterned after God's own design for the world. And as his image bearers on this earth, we're made in God's image. Work is a way in which we mirror our Father, creating, building, ordering, stewarding what he has already made. It is a sacred duty. In fact, the Hebrew word used in Genesis 2:15 for work is also used elsewhere in the Old Testament for serving God, worshiping God, serving him. That's why Christians historically saw work as a God-given calling, no matter what you did for work. In fact, Richard Baxter, a 16th century theologian, captures this Christian idea of work being sacred amazingly. This is what he wrote. You are no more excused from the service of work than the poorest man. God has strictly commanded labor for all. So this quote from Baxter, it captures the Christian worldview at the time, the thought around work. And it was specifically tied to this idea that work was not only sacred, but a way in which humanity worshiped and served God. Vishal Mangawati, in his book, The Book That Made Your World, says that only the biblical worldview shared by Jews and Christians made work sacred, and Christianity carried that view even further, transforming civilization to what we have today. No other culture, even in Christianity before the Reformation in the medieval period, there was still a lot of Greco-Roman thought going around where this idea that work was bad, it was below the elite. Work was seen as something that the poor people did. You know, you were either a philosopher, a religious thinker, somebody who studied and prayed, or you were one of the worker bees. And this is consistent throughout cultures outside of Christianity, specifically after the Reformation. Now, why is what Elon Musk said so chilling? This is my concern, and it should be concern for all of you, right? When a society turns its back on a specific mandate from God, a mandate that actually is beneficial for society as we've seen through history in the last 500 years, and even a bit beyond, right? The development of technology, the moral foundations, you could say, was built on the back of people who saw work as sacred and strived to have communion with God through their everyday labors. When you take that away, when you deliberately remove that from a society that was built on it, in the words of Philip Reif, I think it was, who said, this is a death work. It is a direct assault on the sacredness of Christianity. The one way in which the majority of the world, the West, worshipped God was in their daily activities. Wiped away. But it's more than that even. We're changing what it means to be human. If I'm no longer working, I'm no longer looking for God to bless the work of my hands. Instead, I start waiting for the system to provide for me. This sounds a lot like a situation we have in Revelation 13, where John is writing of the end times beast system and the Antichrist. Revelation 13. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. Now, if you look through all of human history until this splinter of time that we're living in right now, this verse right here, this passage was not possible. It could not have been possible for a system in Babylon, for a system in Rome, for a system for any system for that matter, to control the entire world, the entire buying and selling. But now you introduce AI, which can track every conversation, every citizen. AI is literally taking over the world in every aspect. Some things good, yeah, but honestly, if we look through history, mankind does not do a very good job of stewarding the gifts, the talents that we're given by God. But if people stop working, something deeper happens to our humanity. Work, as I mentioned before, is one of the ways in which God helps us to trust him, to become more like Christ, right? So if a culture gets to a point where people no longer work at all, where AI does everything, we're no longer depending on God. We're depending on a system outside of God. What is that? That is an idol. That is the ultimate idol, the greatest idol of all idols, where we rely on everything from this other thing outside of God. We begin to worship it. We begin to entertain the thought that we would do anything to maintain that, which opens the door to temptation, and perhaps one of the greatest temptations of all, the mark of the beast. Taking the mark of the beast. Thankfully, those of us who follow Christ today will not be here when that happens. But you can see the system moving that way. And if Elon Musk is right, in the next 10 to 20 years, this is going to be a reality. This is a very reality where the mark of the beast can fully thrive. Anyways, that's what I have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, and in the meantime, take care and God bless.